Two crazy shoes, two crazy use cases, or so we're told. Which one's going to be better for you though? The Wave Rebellion Pro or the Wave Rebellion Flash? Today, we break it down. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be comparing the Wave Rebellion Pro and the Wave Rebellion Flash from Mizuno. Now if it's your first time here, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of the review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full review when you get a sec. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, do so now, and turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, which is typically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but to start off the year, we're doing daily releases. If you like what you see today, please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed or what other shoe comparisons you'd like to see in the future. Now to kick this video off, let's do some disclaimers and disclosures, which are that I was provided the Wave Rebellion Pro 3 for free for the purpose of review, but I wasn't paid to create any videos. No one gives me a script, no one tells me what to say or watches the video beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. And with the two, I actually bought this one with my own money from my local running store, and I did get a slight discount as I've created content for my running store in the past. Now, before we talk about intended use, one thing I do need to say, because I can already hear people heading to the comment section right now saying, why is he pronouncing it that way? Mizuno is a Japanese last name. In fact, the owner of the company, Mizuno, is Mizuno-san, which basically translates to Mr. Mizuno. So Mizuno is the Japanese pronunciation. I am half Japanese. I grew up in Japan. That's how I grew up saying it. Now, if you pronounce it Mizuno, you're not technically incorrect, as that is the Americanized name of the brand. It's what most people know it as here in the US. It's basically the difference between Adidas and Adidas. So now you know. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the shoes. These two shoes look very, very similar, but the Pro is going to be the marathon racer and the Flash is going to be the training companion to this shoe. Now what does training companion mean? Well, basically most brands have a slightly less aggressive, slightly, I don't want to say dumbed down, but really that's kind of what it is, like less responsive foams, less premium material version of their racing shoe so that you can do the bulk miles of your training, like your speed workouts, your long runs, your marathon workouts, all of that in the training companion shoe, or the Supertrainer if you want to call it that, and then you do your racing in the Supershoe. Now there's been some blending of these categories in recent years as shoe technology has gotten better and better, but the general idea remains the same, that you're supposed to do most of your training in the shoe and most of your racing in the shoe. A lot of people though, what they'll do is they will just take last year's race shoes and that's what they do their workouts in until they get a new pair for the next A race that they have on the calendar. So if you're going on to Mizuno's website and you're looking at the shoes, both of these are probably going to be in the speed category. But in speaking with the brand, they've mentioned to me that the way that they look at shoes is really by pace and not necessarily by like use case. So if you are a sub 3, maybe even a sub 230 marathoner, that's what the brand themselves considers the Pro 4, right? If you're looking though at maybe like the 3 to 4 hour range, that's where you might want to wear the Flash. And then they're even saying like if you're in like the 4+ hour range, then you might want to consider like the Neo Vista, which is another potential like Supertrainer or marathon training companion from the brand. Ultimately, to me though, it's kind of more a situation of different strides, different shoes, and so it's going to come down to preference, and the shoe that you race in should be the shoe that makes you feel the fastest and most comfortable on the last mile of your race, not necessarily the first mile. Now with that all being said, let's break down these two shoes. The Wave Rebellion Pro comes in at $250, meanwhile the Flash comes in at $170. Both of these are pretty typical for the categories of shoe that both of these sit in. If anything, they're starting to be on the lower end, which is kind of crazy. Now from a specs perspective, the Pro comes in at 7.7 ounces and 218 grams, meanwhile the Flash comes in at 8.4 ounces and 238 grams. This is a little bit of kind of that thing we're talking about where you do most of your training. Part of the reason why these shoes are heavier as well, they're not sacrificing as much weight in the shoe because they're supposed to be a little bit more durable. But the other thing is going from a slightly heavier shoe but responsive to a lighter shoe but also responsive, but even more responsive even potentially, then you're going to feel very, very nimble and light on feet because you're losing some weight on the shoe itself as well. Moving to the stack, you have 61 in the heel, 57 in the forefoot for a 4mm heel to toe drop. Meanwhile, in the Flash, you have 47 in the heel, 46.5 in the forefoot, and a 0.5 millimeter drop. So it's almost a 0 drop, which kind of surprises me. Just full disclosure, I do get my measurements from either the brand, but if they're already out on Running Warehouse, I prefer to go with Running Warehouse because my understanding is they measure them independently. So that's what these were both measured as through Running Warehouse. Now, just a reminder though, when it comes to Mizuno running shoes, where they actually measure the stack height for the World Athletics approvals is kind of over here. And so technically both shoes are under 40 millimeters and are race legal for professional runners. For the everyday runner like myself and probably most of you, well, it doesn't really matter. No one's going to check the stack height of our shoes. Now, from a fit perspective, both of these fit true to size. I don't think either fits short technically, but I have had some kind of toe discomfort with both of these shoes, specifically in my left foot, which is a little bit bigger than my right foot. And I think it's more to do with kind of the geometry of the shoes and less to do with the length of the shoes. And so I think lengthwise, they do fit true to size. Now, as far as the fit throughout the shoe, like the width of the shoe, I would say that the Pro 3 fits standard in the heel and forefoot or toe box, and then it's kind of got a narrow midfoot. But the Flash, however, I feel like fits kind of narrow throughout, but then has a slightly roomier toe box. Now, moving to those uppers, both have what they're calling engineered mesh, but it's pretty easy to see just whether it's visually, but also once you get the, the shoes on feet and you actually feel the materials, that it's a slightly different take on engineered mesh. With the Flash 2, it's a little bit more rough. You can maybe hear that it's a little bit scratchy, or not scratchy, but you can scratch it. It's a thicker overall mesh, and it's not going to be quite as breathable as the Pro 2, but it's still very, very breathable and lightweight. But with the Flash, you get a more structured heel cup, you get kind of a more structured overall upper, and that's pretty typical because you're putting in more miles. The shoes are supposed to be a little bit more durable, so you're going to get a little bit more overall structure in the shoe. Now, from a lockdown perspective, I feel like you get good lockdown in the shoe as well. And with the Flash, I did not need to use a runner's knot, but something to call out is that the tongue is just kind of a thin piece of fabric and that it is not gusseted. And then it is a little bit short, so if you were to do a runner's knot in the shoe or needed to do a runner's knot in the shoe, then you probably would get a little bit of lace bite there at the top. But all in all, I feel like the upper gives you good lockdown, and I don't shift around in this shoe because it's not quite as aggressive as the Pro 3. Now with the Pro 3, that mesh is going to be a lot more breathable, but because of the aggressive nature of the shoe, I did need to use the runner's knot for lockdown purposes because you're really on your toes on the shoe. Like, it really does push you on your toes. Because of that, I did feel myself shifting a little bit forward in the shoe despite having pretty good lockdown in that midfoot. But the other thing is the tongue is not fully gusseted, and it is also short, which means that I was experiencing lace bite again there on the top of the shoe. So all in all, I prefer the Pro 3 upper. I think it's a better, more accommodating fitting upper, but they really need to fix that tongue going forward for sure. Moving to the midsoles, the shoes have a different take on the foams and everything. So in the Pro 3, you have Mizuno Energy XP, which I believe is a TPEE based foam. And then the plate is a carbon fiber plate, so it's going to be a lot more aggressive. This shoe overall is faster. It's a lot more responsive. It's a lot bouncier, a lot more aggressive overall, but you're not getting pace versatility. Like, this shoe is like top speed level shoe. That's where I think like Mizuno kind of hit the nail on the head in my mind, where this shoe is going to, for the most part, like with some exception, but for the most part, be for people who are very, very fast, definitely sub 3-hour marathoners, potentially even faster. For me, I can only really do short, fast intervals with rest with this kind of shoe. Like, I can't take this on extended runs because it just really beats up my calf, Achilles, lower limbs, and my feet as well. Meanwhile, over here, we have Mizuno Energy Light Plus, which is a PIVA-based foam, and then you have Mizuno just Energy on the bottom there, which I believe is just a TPE-based foam, which is going to be a little bit more supportive. So you kind of have, you have the PIVA, you have the bouncy, responsive layer up top, then on the bottom you have that more supportive, firmer layer overall, and then in the middle you actually have a fiberglass plate, which you can see is not as rigid as a carbon fiber plate. I can't do this with the Pro 3. So as far as pace versatility goes, I find that this shoe has a lot more. Today I took it on a long run, 14-mile long run, and was able to start kind of with easy paces. It felt comfortable, worked my way up to kind of low to mid and moderate, and then finished out kind of higher and moderate at the end of that run, and felt comfortable throughout the whole run, felt comfortable with all the paces. I could not in the Pro 3. Like the Pro 3 would have destroyed my legs if I tried to do that running it. The Flash is just a lot more forgiving and a lot more pace versatile, and it's a lot more supportive overall. Now, neither of these shoes are stable, right? Neither of these shoes are stable, and that has to do with both the unique geometries as well as just the narrowness, at least in the Flash, of the shoe itself. And so like if you need stability, you should not be running in either of these shoes. You may even sprain an ankle. I've stepped in like potholes and different things a couple of times in these shoes, and luckily have been fortunate not to roll an ankle, but it was a little bit scary for a second there when I made those steps. So these are shoes you definitely want to watch your step. You don't want to be running on varying terrain or like rocky terrain in these shoes unless you have just ankles of steel, which you might. But typically if you're on those terrains, you're going to want to be wearing a different shoe anyway. So all in all, a lot more versatile from a pace versatility standpoint, but doesn't have quite the top end speed that the Pro 3 has, or at least doesn't give you like that effortless top speed that the Pro 3 has. But I have done some faster, shorter intervals in the Flash as well, and very much was able to hit my paces and enjoyed them. It just didn't quite feel as effortless or smooth as in the Pro 3. Now moving to the outsoles, both shoes have a G3 rubber. The geometry or the pattern is a little bit different though, because you have that banded pattern in the Pro, and then you have just a more standard full coverage and thicker overall outsole in the Flash. Now I actually think the Flash has slightly better overall traction than the Pro, but that outsole does add significant weight overall, and so it's just going to be a little bit thicker, but I think it's definitely going to be a lot more durable. Meanwhile, with the Pro 3, the fact that it's full coverage is awesome, and then being banded is going to save a lot of weight there. And so, you know, for a racing shoe, sometimes it's hard to get a really, really good rubber or full coverage on there because they're trying to sacrifice weight, and rubber weighs a lot. And so obviously I can see why they did that with the Pro 3, and I have no problems with it. It's one of the better overall outsoles on a racing shoe. But the Flash has a phenomenal outsole in my mind. It's very, very sticky. That G3 rubber does a really, really good job. Now, as far as my pick, it's kind of not really a fair question because these two shoes are different in usage overall. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the Flash. I think that the Flash does fit, it just fits my stride a little bit better. The Pro 3 is faster, and I really, really enjoy running in it, but I have to reserve it for fast, like shorter intervals because of how aggressive it is. The Flash itself doesn't beat my legs up quite as much, but I find that I can really get comfortable in it and hit a lot of different paces. And so just for that reason, personally, I would go Flash. And if I had to race in one of them, I would actually race in the Flash. I do think it could do really, really well up to the marathon. And so I would choose that overall. But I wish that I had the running economy or the stride for the 3 because it's clearly the faster option. Like I said, it's clearly kind of a story of different strides, different shoes, right? Different form, different shoes. So depending on who you are, different shoes are going to react with your feet a little bit differently. So for me, the Flash is going to win out because it's going to be the shoe that's going to allow me to cross the finish line most comfortable at the end there, versus the Pro 3, I'd be worried about pulling something due to overuse. So just some final thoughts on the shoe. Both of these are awesome, and I've had both of these in my rotation for about the last month now and have been really, really enjoying running in both of them. I've heard word that the Pro Low, which is kind of a less aggressive version of the Pro 3, is going to be releasing in the US. And so it basically is all of the foams and technology of this shoe, but in the geometry of this shoe, which I think sounds like a huge winner to me. So I'm really excited to try that shoe, see how it reacts with my foot, because I do think it's going to be the better overall option, just again for myself. But I'm excited to see that come through. So yeah, overall though, really, really enjoy both these shoes. Both of these plus the Neo Zen have made me a Mizuno believer. I've been rooting for the brand. I've wanted the brand to really succeed, and I think it's awesome to start to see some of the innovation come through from their move to Norway. Excited to see what happens next with the brand. I know that there's 3 more mystery shoes coming out this year, which I'm excited to try on, and can't wait to see what the update to the Pro is going to look like, both in the low form as well as in the 4, which I believe will probably release early next year or end of this year. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't seen anything in that regard. Now, if you watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and if you haven't already, hit that like button and leave a comment. Let me know what shoe comparison you would like to see next. And as always, we'll finish off with a question, which is there a brand where you prefer the Supertrainer or the Training Companion over the Supershoe? And if so, what is that brand? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.